Welcome to Coping with COVID's HeadGame. I'm your host, Dan Garrity. Over the last year, each and every one of us has faced challenges brought on by COVID-19. These challenges have affected the way we work, learn, and interact with each other, not to mention the way we handle stress. Stress can take an emotional toll, which is why it's important to take care of our mental health. However, when you're dealing with a global pandemic, this might not be as easy as it sounds. Here to give us a few tips on coping with COVID's HeadGame, pediatric neuropsychologist for Optum Idaho, Dr. Dennis Woody, and Optum's Strategic Communications Director, Christopher Smith. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and helping out with this effort. May I just ask really quickly, Chris, you're new to Optum. What is Optum? There's got to be something wonderful about this organization that brought you to it very recently.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's Optum Idaho is part of a much bigger company. It's actually part of a company known as United Health Group. It's actually the number 5 on the Fortune 500. It's the largest healthcare company in the world by revenue. But Optum Idaho is kind of a little smaller speck on that big UHG globe. We have about 75 employees here in Idaho. They're mainly in Boise, and some are in locations around the state. And what we do for Optum Idaho is we are the largest managed care contract that the state of Idaho has. We provide behavioral health services and benefits through a network of providers around the state, about 2,100 certified clinicians, and we serve about 350,000 Idahoans who are eligible for Medicaid, which is the federal state healthcare program that's designed for people who meet certain income qualifications, usually low income qualifications, people who are older adults, and also the disabled. And so that what behavioral health covers, and that's everything from counseling to pharmacological treatment, to therapy, and it addresses all kinds of both mental illness and substance use disorder. And so we've actually been here since 2013 when the state of Idaho decided to move the Idaho Behavioral Health Plan from a state-run program to a contracted program. So to your question though, it's great to work for a company that you feel like, yes, it's a business, but at the same time that you're ultimately serving a little higher purpose and helping people live healthier lives, both mentally and medically, in terms of their mental well-being.
What does a strategic communication director do?
Duties as assigned, which is what my boss would say.
sounds like an old Air Force thing. It's like, oh, geez.
Yes, exactly. No, strategic communications covers a lot of things, and it may sound like kind of corporate speak, but at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is position the company and its services to best reflect the business outcomes you'd like to achieve, as well as the reputation that you want your company to have among the public. So we're not selling Subarus. We're actually doing what we call, again, sorry, corporate speak, but thought leadership. Our aim is to position Optum Idaho as serving all Idahoans with validated, scientifically proven information from reliable sources about how you can live a healthier, mentally healthier life, how you can reach out to people who you think may be suffering or understand a little more how they cope, and actually break down some of the stigmas that exist around discussing things like suicidality and depression, anxiety, especially in the times in which we're living.
Yeah, you've said a couple of times, almost apologetically, corporate speak, but I appreciate you letting us in and examining very closely your world and the strategic communication world. As you know, Dr. Woody, I'm fascinated with your specialty as well. And as our producers were pointing out, what an interesting specialty, neuro pediatric psychiatry. So what are the makeups of that particular specialty?
Well, I think you get initially a grounding in how neurocognition works in both children and adults. And then you take that base rate of normalcy and learn about different abnormalities or deviations from that base rate of functioning, and how that relates to feelings, personalities, behavior, especially, and in my case, in children, as their brain is a very fluid environment or circumstance where it's supposed to be maturing and changing and advancing in terms of its capacity to manage complexity. So,
and yet, I beg your pardon, but you said in our research that you deal with adults and the pediatric population.
well, training almost always starts working with the adult models, and then you move into those areas if you want to specialize with adults into the adult arena. And as a focus in pediatrics, mine was otherwise directed to children.
Now, clinically speaking, how does the treatment plan differ between those populations, between the pediatric and the geriatric?
Well, treatment in the context of psychotherapy, is that what you're referencing, Dan?
Sure, yeah.
Well, I think children don't have the capacity for symbolic reasoning quite like adults do. They certainly don't understand a lot of the nuances that are important in adult interventions. But you know, as a neuropsychologist, my role really wasn't as a clinical therapist in the sense of doing cognitive therapy. I focused principally on diagnostics and looking at function within the brain and how that function could be expected to develop based on damage that it might have incurred.
Yeah, and some of that damage might be incurred environmentally, like with a global pandemic. What are you seeing?
Well, for the most part, I think in the context of children, a lot of difficulty initially with the exposure or limited exposure to their peer groups. Children, while we have the ability to do a Zoom call, for example, it's not the same as playing with your friends on the playground or around the house at home. And so that rather abrupt termination of normalcy for those children, like in any other context, when you take a child from point A to point B without any sort of preparation, it becomes a management for resiliency.
Now, the important thing here is that's awful. We're feeling it. What can we do about it? I'm a grandparent. What can parents do? What can grandparents do?
Well, I think the gift we have as human beings is we have language, and we share ideas through language. And even as an adult trying to communicate with a child, it's important to help them understand in words that they process well that things are different and things have changed, and we're going to be just fine. And here are some things we can do to help ourselves. In other words, you want to instill in the child this sense of purpose and hope. And you, as the adult, still represent their standby assist, if you will.
Here's the great gift that you have, Dr. Woody. I feel more comforted hearing you speak and the very words that you're using. What a great gift that is, Chris. I hope you're surrounded by a bunch of these kinds of professionals. You're the guy though that needs to bring everybody into the tent, so to speak, and highlight this. What's the central message to us right now regarding mental health and COVID?
Yeah, I think, what we've tried to do, and you're exactly right, the folks I call SMEs, subject matter experts, might be corporate speak, like Dr. Woody and our medical director, Julie Wood, and several of our licensed social workers who I work with to kind of help them tell the story and be sort of the non-billable hours counselor through the mediums
that's news to Dennis all of a sudden, non-billable.
But no, to be able to talk to a public and an audience that really we believe is the entire state of Idaho, not just our Medicaid members, especially now, it really has been a game changer in the discussion and the ability to reach out and connect with others to see what they're going through. Yeah. And at least start a conversation about how are you feeling? and being open to sharing how you're feeling too, that, yeah, I'm an adult and we've lived through a lot of things, but this is a game changer. And that really has, I think, been a watershed moment for communications, for technology, and for discussion of mental well-being. And we actually had a campaign that was started before COVID that was based on an effort they made in Sandy Hook, as you'll remember, the site of a horrific school shooting. It was called the Sandy Hook Promise. And it was a school-based campaign that says, let's have a week that starts with hello. And the team I work with, they had that and they were working on that. And then the pandemic hit and it really brought resolution into what we needed to do from a public awareness standpoint to bring that message and that encouragement to reach out and connect by whatever means possible.
I absolutely love that message. And Chris, I'm going to take your advice and I'm going to use it right now. And I'm going to realize a lifelong dream as somebody who's I've always wanted to ask a psychologist, Dr. Woody, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And I mean that sincerely, because you take on so much. And you provide comfort but how are you doing?
I think pretty well. I've certainly had to change my behavior. I think I've sought out alternative activities to, in some ways, diversify my capacity for contending with the stressors that we all have in this pandemic. And quite frankly, I think that it is the diversification of those strategies that we use that makes us stronger. Because when you polarize into one or two or maybe three exclusive ways of taking care of yourself, sadly and invariably, what happens is you can't access those at times. And so you're left without what you've been using up to that point. And so diversifying your skill set, whether it's physical activity, whether it's different kinds of books you're reading, or people you're writing letters to, of all things, snail mail. Those are the sorts of activities that I think help break the monotony of, being by yourself.
Yeah, what fantastic advice. Dr. Woody, I sure appreciate it. Chris Smith, thank you for coming along. I do trust that these were non-billable hours, but you have in fact helped our viewers cope with COVID's head game. Thank you so much and good night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Dan.